Hi and welcome back here. My name is Arlie. I'm an aviation English teacher and I help pilots or future pilots to improve their English and have a better communication on board. Today we are focusing on the cadet program for Air France and in particular for the TOEIC section and the requirements concerning the TOEIC 4 skills. So if you're aiming at joining Air France as a cadet this year, then you're going to have to go through the TOEIC 4 skills. It's not the TOEIC listening and reading anymore, but this is a little bit more complicated than that. So the TOEIC listening and reading is included in the 4 skills, but you need to add the speaking and writing section. So here I'm going to explain to you how you can prepare and get ready for that test in an effective way and not wasting your time and energy on that test, which is not really related to aviation. First of all, we're going to talk about how you need to prepare and how you can make your plan, your study plan effectively. You need to start absolutely with a mock test. A mock test means that you do a test that is exactly the same condition than exam conditions, and you get a result, you get corrected from ETS Global, which is the company that created the TOEIC test, and they're the one correcting as well. So the best is actually to take a test first, a mock test. You don't need to do an official test that is at 200 something euros, but you can go through a mock test. If you go through a training center like me, they can offer you to do a mock test. Why doing a mock test first? Because from the mock test, you will be able to identify your weaknesses, the sections where you need to work, and then you can just focus on your areas of improvements where you need to actually work on. One thing that is very important when you prepare for the TOEIC test is that you need to remember to focus on 2 different types of skills. You need to focus on language skills. So if your English level is below B2, which is a very good intermediate level, then you need to start first by improving your English level and making sure you reach a minimum of B2. You can do it in business context, aviation context, general context, as long as you reach a B2 level. This is what is the minimum required. However, if your English level is sufficient and you have a B2 level already, you need to focus on test skills. So all the techniques that would help you to reach the score. Sometimes some of my students have sufficient level of English, even way above. They have a very good C1 level, but they can't reach that minimum level due to the techniques or due to skills they did not develop, which are not linguistic skills. I'll give you an example: time management. Time management, if you go above the time, then you will not get the right score because you will not have time to answer all the questions. So time management, stress management are really things that you need to manage. Those are also valid for a simple listening and reading test. If you take just the simple TOEIC listening and reading that you aim at joining Air France and you are already a professional pilot, these are also applicable to you. Once you've done your mock test, then you can clearly identify if you need linguistic or techniques. If you ask yourself several questions like, did I manage time correctly? Did I feel like I had any problems in any of the sections? Do I feel like I lack vocabulary? Do I need to practice more vocab? Do I have comprehension problems? And kind of different, really taking the time to analyze and clearly see where you make mistakes. Do I have sufficient grammar for that? So asking yourself questions related to language, but also about techniques for the TOEIC in general and for the test. Once you've got that, you can make a study plan and organize all your study plan in the limited time that you want to do that. So if, let's say, I would recommend like a month preparation. So if you do it in 1 month, you do the mock test, it takes about 7 to 10 days to get the correction for the speaking and writing part. But you get the listening and reading section correction straight away. So you can start with that the first week, and then once you get your results, you look at what is wrong with the speaking. There's no requirement for the writing. You can improve your writing, but it's not particularly necessary. The second week, you focus on the speaking, and then after week 2, then you apply what you've learned, what you've tried to improve, and you do a second mock test. After that second mock test, then you can focus and kind of adjust the techniques or the skills that you need to continue to improve. And after 2 weeks, either you do another mock test to check if your result is sufficient. That is actually the best option, but that might be too expensive to do 3 mock tests. It's roughly between 45 euros, it depends on the centers, and not all centers offer it. At the end of the 4 weeks, then doing another mock test will help you to know exactly if you're ready, and you will be ready if you're above the standards. So for example, for the listening and reading, I would recommend to be minimum 900 points or at least 890 points, like in between that. And for the speaking part, I would recommend a minimum of 180 or even above. And if you're below the standard, just don't go. Or if you're just at the limit, don't do it and continue to practice. Now, I'll just briefly list the most common difficulties that my students go through. Number 1 is definitely time management. It's really difficult to manage the time, in particular when you see the timer in the speaking part. That can be really stressful. So time management is very important. It can be in both ways. It can be you're too fast or too slow. Too fast would be that you don't take sufficient time and focus on each question. And too slow is you taking too much time, and then you need to manage that. So being more efficient, for example, in the reading section. The other difficulty is generally in the reading section in part 7. That's the most difficult part. So reading techniques and improving your comprehension is essential here. And finally, the speaking part is definitely an issue, and a lot of candidates succeed in the listening and reading section but fail the speaking. I mean fail because it's not really failing. What I mean by fail is that you are under the minimum required for Air France. But it's not a failure in terms of the test itself, because the test is just meant to know what is your English level. So if you are in the situation that you have the speaking part that is not enough, then you just focus on that one. I don't think you should do 2 skills, like just the speaking and writing, and I'm not even sure it actually exists to do just the speaking and writing. In case, just to make sure that your file is okay for the cadet, I would recommend to do a 4 skills test, because the concentration is actually 2 hours and 22 minutes to be precise, and it's not the same if you take 2 different tests. I mean the listening and reading and the speaking and writing. But to be honest, I'm not sure it even exists. That's the most important here, and if you have any questions or any comments, feel free to ask me.